You are 31 years old. You have $45,000 in savings. And every voice in your life, your parents, your friends, your real estate agent, is screaming the same tired mantra: stop throwing money away on rent. It feels like sound advice. But in the unforgiving economic landscape of 2026, it is a financial death sentence. With mortgage rates cemented at 6.20% and home appreciation flatlining at a mere 1.2%, the math has fundamentally broken. You aren't buying an asset, you are locking yourself into a $3,040 monthly liability that bleeds wealth faster than you can build it. The system isn't designed for you to win. It is designed to keep you paying. Here is the math they are terrified you will understand. The narrative begins in silence. You are 31 years old. For 6 years, you have practiced disciplined austerity, watching your savings account crawl toward the $45,000 mark. It feels like an achievement, a ticket to the American middle class. But in the housing market of January 2026, it is barely an entry fee. You identify the target, a standard 3-bedroom home in a decent zip code. The price tag is $425,000. Immediately, the external machinery of the housing industrial complex begins to grind against your hesitation. Your real estate agent pushes with urgency, weaponizing the fear of missing out, citing low inventory and the perpetual threat that rates might go up. They are salespeople, and you are the commission. Then comes the familial pressure. Your parents, whose financial worldview was calcified in the economic boom of the 1990s, ask the inevitable question: when are you going to stop throwing money away on rent? They do not understand that the math has changed. They speak to you from a timeline where houses cost 2 times the annual income, not 7. Meanwhile, your social circle amplifies the distortion. Friends who bought in the golden window of 2020 post-curated lies of renovated kitchens and backyard paradises, casually dropping terms like equity and locked-in rates. You are isolated. You sit alone with your $45,000 running the numbers for the 100th time. But the calculator is cold, and the output is terrifying. We are no longer in the anomaly of the pandemic era. The 0% interest rate environment has been dismantled. Today, you are financing that $425,000 asset at a market rate of roughly 6.5%. Let's look at the autopsy of your monthly obligation. First, the mortgage principal and interest alone demands $2,146, but ownership is a beast with many mouths. You add property tax at nearly $400 a month. Insurance premiums driven by climate risk and inflation extract another $150. And maintenance, the silent killer of wealth, requires a conservative provision of $354. The total monthly hemorrhage is $3,042. This is the number they don't put on the brochure. $3,042 leaving your account every 30 days before you have bought a single piece of furniture or fixed a single leaking pipe. Now look at your current reality. You are renting a comparable property for $2,200. Your gut instinct screams that something is wrong. The math shows a deficit of $842 every single month if you choose to buy. Yet the world tells you that you are the one making the mistake. They tell you that you are throwing money away. They are lying. You ask the question that keeps you awake at night: which option is actually cheaper? The answer requires us to ignore the emotions and apply a ruthless forensic accounting tool. It is called the 7% rule. You have been fed a lie. A comforting, expensive lie that has been repeated so often it has hardened into cultural dogma. When you rent, you throw money away. When you buy, you build equity. This is false. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of how capital works. The truth is, when you own a home, you are also throwing money away every single day. You're just throwing it into different fires. To understand why your wealth is being incinerated, we must dissect the updated financial model for 2026, the 7% rule. This rule calculates the unrecoverable costs of homeownership, money that leaves your pocket and never returns. It is the true cost of consumption, stripped of the equity illusion. Unlike your mortgage principal, which eventually comes back to you maybe, these costs are pure waste. They are the price of admission to the American dream. Component 1, property taxes, the forever rent. There's no such thing as owning your home free and clear. Even after you pay off the bank, you never truly own your land. You're merely renting it from the government. If you stop paying this rent, men with guns will eventually come to take your house. In 2026, the average effective property tax rate in the United States stands at 1.11%. On your $425,000 home, that is $4,700 a year. Nearly $400 a month? Gone. Forever. You do not build equity by paying the county assessor, but averages hide the brutality of specific markets. If you live in New Jersey, that rate spikes to 2.23%, doubling your unrecoverable cost. If you live in Texas, you pay 1.36%. But I live in California, you say, where taxes are capped. It doesn't matter. While the rate is lower, the asset prices are so inflated that the absolute dollar amount you bleed out is still catastrophic. Whether it's high rates or high assessments, the government gets paid before you do. Component 2, maintenance and the insurance crisis. This is the silent inflation that breaks budgets. For decades, the 1% rule was the gold standard. Budget 1% of your home's value for repairs. That world no longer exists. We are living through a service sector inflation spiral. The cost of labor, materials, and specialized trades has exploded. A roof replacement that cost $10,000 5 years ago is now $18,000. Aging housing stock across America means systems are failing simultaneously. Experts now warn that for many homes, the safe buffer is not 1% but 2% to 4%. And then there is the insurance crisis. From 2022 to 2025, homeowners' insurance rates spiked by a staggering 62%. Climate risk is now a permanent line item in your monthly budget. Insurers are fleeing markets or raising premiums to punish homeowners for existing in weather-prone areas. When the pipe bursts at 2 a.m. or the HVAC system dies in July, that money is not an investment. It is an expense. It is a defense tax just to keep your asset from rotting. For our model, we will be charitable and cap this combined destruction at 1%, but know this, one bad storm and you are underwater. Component 3, the cost of capital, the invisible killer. This is the variable that bleeds the middle class dry, yet almost no one calculates it. Cost of capital is the combination of the interest you pay the bank and the opportunity cost of the money you lock into the house. Let's look at the debt. With mortgage rates cemented at 6.20%, the amortization schedule is your enemy. In the first year of your loan, approximately 80% of every payment goes to interest. You are paying the bank for the privilege of borrowing their money. That interest is not equity, it is rent on money. But the greater tragedy is the money you didn't invest. This is the opportunity cost of equity. When you lock a $85,000 down payment into a house, that money stops working for you. It sits trapped in drywall and timber. What is that house doing? In 2026, Zillow forecasts home value growth at a pathetic 1.2%. It is barely keeping up with inflation. It is a stagnant asset. Now look at the alternative. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are forecasting the S&P 500 to surge between 11% and 14% in 2026, driven by the AI productivity boom. By burying your capital in a house, you are missing the greatest wealth transfer vehicle of the decade. You are earning 1.2% when you could be earning 11%. The difference is roughly 9.8%. That is money you are setting on fire by choosing to buy. When you combine the mortgage interest and this massive lost opportunity, the cost of capital in the 2026 economy has hardened to a conservative 5%. The final calculation. Let's summon the 7% rule. 1.11% property tax, plus 1%. Maintenance and insurance, plus 5% cost of capital, roughly 7%. Take the home price, $425,000. Multiply by 7%, that is $29,150 per year in pure unrecoverable waste. Divide by 12. The unrecoverable cost of owning this home is $2,470 per month. Now look at the rental market. You can rent this exact same house for $2,200. The verdict is mathematical and absolute. Renting is not just cheaper, it is $279 cheaper per month in pure economic value. And that is before we even talk about the cash flow disaster. That $279 is just the value difference. The actual cash leaving your bank account is far worse. You are paying a premium to own an asset that underperforms the market, drains your liquidity, and traps you in debt. This is not building wealth. This is financial masochism. The final line of defense for the homeowner, the last psychological bunker they retreat to when the monthly math fails, is the promise of the tax shield. You hear it at every dinner party, "At least I get the tax deduction." In 2026, this is not a financial argument. It is a ghost story. It is a memory of an economic era that has been legislated out of existence. The government has rewritten the code. Under the shadow of the One Big Beautiful Bill, OBB, and aggressive IRS inflation adjustments, the landscape of deductions has shifted beneath your feet. For the tax year 2026, the standard deduction has swelled to $16,100 for individuals and $32,200 for married couples filing jointly. This number is the threshold of relevance. If your itemized deductions do not exceed this wall, you get zero benefit from owning a home. Zero. Let's run the forensic accounting on your potential mortgage. On a $340,000 loan at 6.5%, you will pay roughly $22,000 in interest during year one. You add your property taxes, but here lies the trap. The SALT cap, state and local tax deduction, limits this benefit. Even if we assume a full deduction of your $4,700 property tax bill, let's look at the total. $22,000 in interest plus $4,700 in taxes equals $26,700 in total itemized deductions. The verdict? If you are a married couple, $26,700 is less than the standard deduction of $32,200. This means buying the house gives you absolutely no tax advantage over a renter who takes the standard deduction. You are paying thousands in interest to the bank believing you are writing it off, when in reality, you are simply incinerating capital. The tax shield is a myth designed to make the pill of debt easier to swallow. Beyond the tax illusion, we must confront the danger of house-poor economics. Proponents of buying love the word equity. They treat it as synonymous with wealth. It is not. In the volatility of the 2026 economy, equity is dead money. It is illiquid. You cannot use your kitchen renovation to pay for a medical emergency. You cannot trade a square footage of your bedroom to buy groceries. The only way to access that wealth is to sell the asset, incurring 6 to 10% transaction costs, or take on more debt at punitive interest rates. Contrast this with the renter. Remember the cash flow calculation? Buying costs $3,042 per month. Renting costs $2,200. The renter saves $842 a month. The renter also retains their $45,000 down payment. This is live cash, it is liquid, it is mobile, and most importantly, it can be deployed into the one asset class that is actually performing. This brings us to the most violent disparity of all, the opportunity cost. We are witnessing a divergence in asset performance that will define the wealth gap of the next decade. Real estate in 2026 is an exhausted asset. Zillow predicts growth of 1.2% to 1.7%. Redfin predicts 1%. It is barely moving. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is energized by the AI productivity boom. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan project market returns between 11% and 14% for 2026, with long-term averages holding strong at 8-10%. Let's project this forward 10 years. If you buy the house, you gain modest appreciation, but you lose massive amounts of capital to interest, taxes, and maintenance. If you rent and you discipline yourself to invest that $45,000 upfront plus the $840 monthly savings into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, the compound interest effect is explosive. The math suggests that after a decade, the renter does not just break even. The renter ends up approximately $120,000 wealthier than the homeowner. $120,000, that is not a rounding error. That is a college fund. That is 5 years of early retirement. That is life-changing liquidity. By choosing to buy in 2026, you are essentially paying a $120,000 penalty for the emotional satisfaction of holding a deed. Does this mean buying is always wrong? No. But the window of opportunity is narrowed to a slit. Buying makes sense only if you fall into specific, rare categories. 1. The hyperlocal. Gambler. You live in a market like Syracuse, New York, or Madison, Wisconsin, where climate resilience and affordability are driving abnormal price appreciation. If you are buying in cooling markets like Austin or coastal Florida, you are catching a falling knife. 2. The marry the house. Optimist. You believe you can buy now and refinance later when rates drop. But Fannie Mae doesn't see rates dropping below 6% until the end of 2026, if at all. This is a risky bet. If prices dip, you lose equity and cannot refinance. You are trapped. 3. The long-term resident. You are absolutely certain you will not move for 10 to 15 years. Transaction costs devour short-term owners. If you move in 5 years, the agent commissions alone will wipe out any equity you thought you had. For the vast majority, especially the 31-year-old with $45,000 in savings, the data leads to a single cold conclusion. The pressure you feel is manufactured. The advice you are hearing from your parents is expired vintage wisdom from 1995. The urgency from your agent is a sales tactic. In 2026, wealth is not built by signing a 30-year debt contract for a stagnant asset. Wealth is built by mobility, by liquidity, by arbitrage. The 7% rule is spoken. The unrecoverable cost of owning, $2,479, is higher than the cost of renting, $2,200. The cash flow is negative. The opportunity cost is massive. Do not buy a home to impress people who are drowning in their own leverage. Do not buy a home because you think it's what adults do. Rent the house, keep your cash, automate your investments. Let the landlord worry about the insurance premiums and the rotting roof. You have a future to build. Get out of the market and run the numbers for yourself, because in this economy, the only person who cares about your bank account is you.